Alright, David Harry here, and in this video I just want to talk about a particular issue to do with the iPhone 16 series of phones, and this is actually an issue that Apple could have completely avoided. Now this particular issue is the iPhone's inability to be able to work with certain external storage, and the reason why is because the iPhone cannot power certain types of external storage devices. Now I have already done a video which goes into great detail about this particular problem and shows practical examples of the problem as well. So if you want a bit more information about this particular problem, there will be a link to that video in the video description below and at the end of this video. However, for this video I just want to stay focused on one very clear point here, and that is that Apple will definitely have known that their restriction on the power limit for what the iPhone can actually power externally was definitely going to become a problem. Now, just to be clear, this video is not about scaremongering or anything like that, because the truth is this particular problem that I am talking about will only affect a tiny percentage of the users for the iPhone 16 series of phones. And indeed, the vast majority of users who are going to be using external storage such as SSDs will simply not come across this problem. As a for instance, if you're used to using something like the Samsung T7, you will have absolutely no problem with this particular issue happening to you. However, I have a number of SSDs on the table here, and a few of these will not work because of this particular issue. So the issue is simply that the iPhone just cannot power the combination of certain enclosures and certain SSDs, mostly Gen 4 NVMe SSDs. Now, like I say, to most people, this will not be a problem because they will not be wanting to use such an SSD system on their iPhone. However, for those of us who are doing serious video work, this could and will become an issue. Now, where the issue is most likely to happen is when you start using ProRes 422HQ at 4K using 120 frames per second, because the thing is, at that point, you are going to need to be able to sustain a minimum bitrate of 442 megabytes per second in order to be successful in recording long takes of that particular resolution, frame rate and codec. Now, to do those types of recordings will require a very fast SSD. Now, in that instance, the type of SSD that you would normally use for that type of recording would contain usually a Gen 4 NVMe SSD. Now, for the type of person who is interested in doing recordings like that, it is highly likely that they already do similar types of recordings, in which case they will definitely be using drive systems which are suited to those types of recordings, and it's highly likely that those drive systems are going to contain Gen 4 NVMe SSDs within them. Now, in every test that I have done, in every single combination where I have used a Gen 4 NVMe SSD, the iPhone simply cannot power the enclosure and the SSD, because the enclosure and the SSD at that point are requiring more power than what the iPhone can actually deliver to the drive. So what has happened here is that Apple have limited the output of the iPhone 16 series of phones to 4.5 watts out of its USB port. Now, in most circumstances, that is going to be absolutely fine, as I have already explained. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, hold on a minute, Dave, what really is the problem that you're trying to make out here? Because obviously, if this is a problem that only affects a very small amount of people, and obviously Apple are well within the recommended ranges for the power delivery for USB-C, what is the problem? Well, what I'm going to do now is to explain why it is a problem and how Apple definitely would have known that it would become a problem and how they could have gotten about it. So basically, this 4.5 watts is well within the USB-C specification and is indeed the recommendation for the power output of a USB device that needs to power external devices. However, it is not a hard and fast rule, so Apple could easily have upped that power limit if they wanted to. And further to that, if you are using the Apple camera app, you can only record ProRes 4K 120 frames per second to an external drive. You definitely can't record it internally. Now, you can record internally with other apps. However, Apple's own app forces you to have to go external. Now, at that point there, the Apple engineers will definitely have known that there could potentially be problems doing this. And the reason why they would definitely have known is because they would know that the type of person who was likely to want to record 4K 120 ProRes would definitely be using the types of drives that you would normally associate with that particular frame rate and resolution using ProRes. And further to that, the very same engineers at Apple will also have known that that power limit on the iPhone's output would definitely get in the way of using drives that had Gen 4 NVMe SSDs in them, which once again is typically what you would use in order to record such high bit rates associated with the likes of ProRes in 4K at 120 frames per second. Now, some people out there might be thinking to themselves, well, hold on a minute, Dave, if Apple had have allowed for that higher power output, it would drain the battery faster on the phone. Now, yes, that would be the case. However, the draining of the battery would be the least concern to somebody who is wanting to record ProRes 4K 120. Their main concern would be that they could actually record it, not the actual amount of battery that they were going to get to be able to do that. Okay, so to sum this up then, and as far as I'm concerned, the Apple engineers will definitely have been aware of this particular problem, and they will also have been very aware of the fact that that particular problem would actually affect certain users. And at the end of the day, all they had to do was to bump up the power output of the USB-C port in order for the USB-C port to accommodate the type of drive that would typically be used for such high recording bit rates. Anyways, hopefully I have made my concern clear here. And to be doubly clear on the point that I said earlier on, this particular problem will be so minuscule as to not bother hardly anybody. So once again, I'm not scaremongering. I am just raising a particular point, which in essence is a very practical point that could have been avoided by Apple. Anyways, if you have liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. A sub to my channel would be absolutely awesome. I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.